Oh, yeah. Now the audience is getting wound up.
Yeah.
There you go.
Good morning, Timothy. Good morning, everybody who is watching us on YouTube, LinkedIn, listening to us in Clubhouse. It's a pleasure to have you with us, and it's even a greater pleasure to have Timothy Langley, the CEO of Langley Esquire, a consultancy in downtown Tokyo, with us this morning again. So, Timothy, we have heard a lot of times that people don't want to listen to us, our long introductions, but today there is something special. So I'll let you talk about it and give you the floor right away.
Thank you, Maya. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for signing on and for being a part of the audience. We really love you. We hope that you enjoy the briefings and that you continue to sign on for us. Today we are filming live from Akalenga. Akalenga is the red brick tax warehouse that's been refurbished. It's on the water in Yokohama. Excuse me. And today, the Rolls-Royce and Bentley Owners Club is holding an extravaganza, a competition for beauty. About 60 cars are assembled here. They're just starting to come in now. Excuse me. And they're in the background, so I'll be doing my briefing as these cars pull in. But it's a pretty exciting event. Last year, maybe 4,000 people showed up for this event. Not really kicking the tires, but I was lucky enough to get Car of the Year last year. I don't know if I'll get it this year. There's some really fabulous cars that are here that really deserve more attention than mine got. But, bribery does work. So we'll see how it goes this year. But thank you very much. And I appreciate you allowing me to film and broadcast from this event. I got other things going on in my life, as you know. But I'm committed to bringing to you a briefing on Japanese politics every Sunday, because otherwise Maya gets really, really difficult with me. The other thing that I'd like to report to you, speaking of Maya, is that her 27th birthday, once again, is this month, I think on Tuesday. Isn't that right, Maya?
Yes, it is
Tuesday?
right.
So,
Tuesday.
Tuesday. And as an audience, we very infrequently get together, but what I would like to propose is we get together on Wednesday, because I got things going on Tuesday. But let's go on Wednesday. There is a fabulous place over by the Sumo Stadium. The area is called Rokoku. It's in Sumida Ward. It's right in town. It's not very hard to find, but they've got a fabulous place called Popeyes. And the address, the web address of Popeyes is 70beersontap.com. So we'll post this out after we finish the show, 70beersontap.com. And let's go there maybe 6:30 on Wednesday and quaff a couple of beers and see how many times Maya will be 27 years old. So it gives us an opportunity to get together. And I very much look forward to seeing those of you that can come, Tom, Logan, a lot of people that we're attached to somehow digitally, but very few opportunities to get together. Maya puts together an event, maybe a diet tour, or the Spanish restaurant event that you had when you launched your company, Maya, a couple of times a year. But this is a good one, so please join us. Let's get right into the briefing on Japanese politics. Now I've got this truck that just pulled in. Is that unbelievable? Right. Okay. Wow.
Okay. Let's get back on track.
What happens on live TV? Gosh, this guy is so rude. Well, I guess nobody really knows what the hell it is that we're doing anyway. So, sorry for that. Oh, I've got a great view of the goddamn truck.
The truck will move away. So
he's probably going to stay there the entire time.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. Okay. Anyway, let's get into the briefing. In spite of all of the distractions that I have now, the lower house is having their election today. This is the 22nd. There are two seats, one in the upper house, one in the lower house, one in Nagasaki number 4, the other in the upper house. It is a kind of a conglomerate of, let me see, it's Tokushima and the adjoining prefecture of Kochi. Those elections will be going on today. It is being somewhat portrayed by some people as a referendum of Mr. Kishida's selection of the new cabinet. It is not that. It is a little bit up in the air. It's not for sure that the LDP will succeed in both of those seats. And as you know, Miss Obuchi is the newly appointed election chairperson within the LDP. So if the LDP doesn't win both of these seats, of course, she will be blamed, and she's got other issues that she's trying to deal with. So it's a little bit of a dicey time for the LDP. It looks like we'll know tonight at around dinner time whether the LDP wins the upper house election. Currently, the contender from the Constitutional Democratic Party looks like he is ahead. He's inching ahead of the LDP contender, but we'll get into that a little bit more. The extraordinary diet session opened on Friday. This was designed by Prime Minister Kishida. He had hoped to be able to open the diet session in time to have some sort of an influence or impact on the elections that were going to happen today. So Saturday is the last day of elections. You'll remember that there's no elections on Sunday, and Saturday is the last day of elections when Mr. Abe was assassinated, you might remember, in the election previously. This is a by-election for just 2 seats, though. It's a little bit different. But on Friday, that was the last possible time that the Prime Minister had any ability to kind of insert himself and to kind of stir up the political passions. And in a fight that he lost with the Diet Steering Committee, he wanted to give a State of the Union address on Friday so that in the presence of the emperor, he would talk about the economy, he'd talk about what's going on with wages, with defense spending, with how he's going to make sure that everybody has soup on the table and a job and want to have many kids. So he lost that, and as a concession, they said, look, it's too delicate a time. The opposition parties did. And Komeito was kind of in that camp, but the LDP wanted to give the Prime Minister an opportunity to talk to the public from the podium within the Diet with the emperor there. And they said, no, it's just too pregnant with innuendo. So we'll give that to you on Monday. So tomorrow he will give a State of the Union address, and it will be replete with lots of flowery words, lots of money being distributed, that sort of thing. So please stay tuned for that. The other thing that happened is that excuse me, the Abe faction, when Mr. Abe was prime minister, was not known as the Abe faction, it was known as the Hosoda faction. And Mr. Hiroyuki Hosoda became the Speaker of the House when Mr. Suga finished being prime minister. So he opened the seat for the leadership of the Seiwakai, the Abe faction, and actually Mr. Abe took over when it was Mr. Suga's turn to become prime minister. Mr. Abe was released from his prime ministerial duties, and he was supposed to, you're supposed to, when you become prime minister, resign from any faction involvement, any LDP involvement, even though you're the president of the LDP. You're supposed to be more of a balanced politician. And so once he finished and he resigned as prime minister, he went right back into the Abe faction. He became the leader of the Abe faction, and that's why we still call it the Abe faction today. After he was assassinated, and it's been 2 years, the leadership has been in just, I don't know if turmoil is the right word, but there's no single voice that's leading this largest faction within Japanese politics, and that hurts. So Mr. Hosoda was appointed as Speaker of the House. He graduated from being the longest serving member, leader of the Seiwakai, to become Speaker of the House very successfully. He's had a little bit of difficulty. He's had trouble with his health, and he announced early last month that he would not be seeking reinstatement as Speaker of the House. So that gives the Prime Minister a chance to appoint somebody else. But what happens with Mr. Hosoda? Typically, as the Speaker of the House, it is the pinnacle of your career. You retire from being the Speaker, you retire from Japanese politics, you sit back, you pat babies on the head, you kiss children, and you just kind of live out your life as an elevated former Japanese politician. Mr. Hosoda has decided to keep his badge, and so it's caused a little bit of consternation on a couple of fronts. And one of those fronts is that if he is going to be a member of the parliament still, one of the ideas is he could move back into the Seiwakai, the Abe faction, and be the leader of this group of 10 or 12 or how many we're counting this month. That seemed to be a really appealing idea. It would fill the power vacuum, but it turns out that it wasn't such a great idea. Mr. Hosoda went on TV and gave a press review, a press conference, and he didn't do so sterlingly well. He was obviously much older than the last time he's given a press interview, and the press was really insistent on talking to him about his involvement with the Unification Church and some of these picadillos that have been nagging him on sexual harassment with people on his staff and people within the press corps, in fact. And you might remember that when this whole issue came up, when Mr. Abe was assassinated, the LDP insisted that all of the members of the LDP make a one-page document. They submit it to Mr. Motegi, the Secretary General, that states explicitly, I'm not involved with the Unification Church. I have no involvement with them. I did have involvement with them if they did. Explain what that was, and then just make sure that it is very clear with your signature that you have nothing else to do. All of the members of the LDP were required to do that under threat of losing their seat within the LDP. They would still be a Diet member, but they would be kicked out of the LDP. So everybody, of course, complied. It was not a requirement of the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate, who were both LDP members. And it's interesting that it wasn't required of the Speaker of the House because he was the leader of the Abe faction during this critical period of time that the Unification Church was beginning to really make inroads and establish itself, something like Soka Gakkai was able to do with Komeito. And so Soka Gakkai is the Buddhist lay organization that created from its political arm the political party Komeito, which is in an alliance with the LDP. The Unification Church saw that as a model to emulate, and they did the same thing. But I think they were a little bit aggressive in collecting donations, and it caused a little bit of friction with a certain person whose mother donated more than 100 million yen into the Unification Church to help her ancestors make it through the pearly gates, and all of the publicity and the marketing and the subliminal messaging that she went through. And this fellow, his inheritance was completely gone. He blamed Mr. Abe. He blamed a lot of people for it, but he took it out on Mr. Abe and made a shotgun and assassinated the Prime Minister, as you know. And so this brought the whole thing with the Unification Church into clearer focus. And that focus continues even today. But before I get too far off of it, Mr. Hosoda was really critically involved as the leader of the Abe faction during that period of time. He was released from actually having to report or fess up to it. And now that he has resigned from the Speaker of the House and he's just a Diet member, he's open to scrutiny, and boy, is he getting it. So the Diet session, the extraordinary Diet session, was opened on Friday. And then this Monday, throughout this next week, it is going to be very hot. The Prime Minister has established, and his cabinet has established, that it will run from October 20th until December 13th. I think that the main thing that they want to get through is a supplementary budget to get the economy going, to help people get back on their feet, to inject money into the economy, and pay all this money out that they're going to be talking about until the end of March. And then at the end of the March, this supplementary budget will run out and we'll move into a new fiscal year. So that's what we've got coming at us. The Prime Minister will have his State of the Union speech on Monday, full diet session, without the Emperor being there. The Emperor, of course, is invited, but I don't know if he's ever attended the day after he's opened the diet session. But it will be a big deal. It will be somewhat contentious, but everything is going to start on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, throughout this week, and moving into all of November and December until the 13th. So that's something to look forward to. But Mr. Hosoda is not out of the woods yet. He has decided he's not going to give up his badge, and he is going to run an election. He was succeeded by Fukushiro Nukaga, who was formerly a minister of finance, so pretty powerful. He was formerly the head of the faction now headed by Mr. Motegi. So it's a big deal for him. Motegi is getting some spiritual benefit out of the fact that now his former colleague, his senpai, is now Speaker of the House. So there's this balancing act that's going on, and the Prime Minister is carefully, piecing out different choice positions to protect himself and to kind of keep people who are potentially contenders for his position somewhat mollified, not off balance, but mollified, so that they can get what they want out of being a powerful politician without having to challenge him head on as Prime Minister. So that's what's going on there. Let me see. There are a couple of things that are going on with the package. So the extraordinary diet session is expected to produce an extraordinary, a supplemental budget. This will be cobbled together by the LDP and Komeito and offered on November 2nd. And then it'll go into the committee hearings, and people will be wanting to criticize it or to make sure that part of it is dedicated to them and not to someplace else. But there are a lot of things that are going on. There are 5 pillars that the Prime Minister's economic package will be dedicated to. And he has told people, when he first signed up the new members of the cabinet, he told them, I want you to be concentrating on a supplemental budget and pull out all stops. Use all tools at your disposal. Everything is on the table, and I need to generate some wealth to the people who are suffering. And he's doing that for a couple of reasons. Number one, the economy is beginning to just stagnate. And number two, he wants to continue to be Prime Minister. So a lot of gift giving, a lot of pet projects will be getting attention. But there are 5 pillars that this will be depending on. And it is, number 1, to ease the pain of inflation. 2, to spur wage growth. 3, to increase investment in Japan or outside investment into Japan. To number 4, to deal with the declining population and how we're going to do with that. Child welfare, birth facilitation, helping people, giving them confidence to have more children than they're having now, and safety and security, including defense spending and projection of Japan's outer rim of defenses, so that China, North Korea, Russia is not further encouraged to make incursions. So that's going on. At the same time, it seems that the Prime Minister's public appreciation is not quite in downfall, but it hasn't improved. He had the G7 in Hiroshima. It blipped up a little bit, but it didn't last very long, maybe 2 weeks, and it went back down. He reshuffled his cabinet with the specific goal of increasing his numbers, put more women in the cabinet, talk more broadly about what he's going to do with the economy. That lasted less than a week. His approval rating went up. And today, depending on who you talk to, whether it's NHK, GG Press, Yomiuri, it's below 30%. And GG Press puts it at around 26%. That's a real danger zone for a prime minister. So he really needs to generate public support, which he's going to do. He hoped to do in a public speech on Friday when he opened the Diet. He wasn't able to do that. We've got these two votes that are happening today. The LDP should win both of them. If it doesn't win the upper house election, it's kind of understandable because the Constitutional Democratic Party is coming on strong, and that particular seat was lost. The seat in Nagasaki, the lower house seat, was lost because the member died. The seat in the upper house was lost because the LDP member there was physically abusive to his Diet secretary, and a scandal erupted, and he resigned as a consequence of that. So the LDP was there, he lost it, and so the Constitutional Democratic Party sees an opportunity there. They've been building on it for 6 months, and it does look like they might run away with that. That's going to cause problems for the Prime Minister and for Ms. Obuchi if the LDP doesn't come home with the bacon on both of those. We'll know tonight at dinner time. But the low expectations of the population with regard to Mr. Kishida are based on this defense spending that he's been talking broadly about, to bring defense spending from 1% of GDP to 2% of GDP. And people understand that that costs money, and the money that could be spent for them, or a subsidy, or gift giving, or maybe lowering the price of fuel. We're entering into winter now. It seems pretty skinny, and there's not more money coming in. And how is he going to be able to justify and find the money to distribute it, to make people feel better, to enhance their wages and that sort of thing? The social services are increasingly taking up more and more taxes, the benefits of the taxes that are collected. And then the Fukushima water release, the Fisheries Association, not just in Fukushima, but in all the surrounding prefectures, has suffered greatly. And so the government is coming in with billions of yen for subsidies, for support. Hokkaido has lost all of its scallop production. It was almost 90% of it was going to China. That is completely stopped. Russia just announced that it too, following China, will ban all seafood imports. They announced that on Thursday. So there's a lot going on. People understand that. They understand that the Prime Minister is going to be using flowery words. He frequently does that. And then they're just very curious about how he's going to be able to perform on that. So let's see. There's also been some movement in the defense industry. When Maya and I talk about our show, we usually circulate an announcement maybe on Friday or Saturday. And one of the items there was the defense industry being initiated or ignited here in Japan. Japan doesn't have a defense complex. It doesn't produce lots of defense material. Usually it's purchasing from the United States or paying the United States to provide that kind of support and services. It does have a lot of capabilities, but the industry for export is non-existent. And so they're trying to initiate that, and there's been some real movement there. So for example, Australia and Mitsubishi Electric executed a joint venture this week. The president of Mitsubishi and the Australian trade minister signed a deal where Mitsubishi will be supplying optical cutting-edge laser technology to boost surveillance and survivability for the Australian Defence Forces. This is a big deal. The Defence Minister, Mr. Minoru Kihara, met with the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, on Thursday to sign a reciprocal access agreement. So this is a big deal where Mitsubishi will go to production in Australia to produce this technology. This is something new. It's perhaps the beginning of something for the Japanese major conglomerates to begin getting into not just defense production, but also offensive production. And there's a lot going on with that debate. I'm going to get into that with the discussions between Komeito and the LDP on what is the breadth of what the Constitution allows. So they're going through that. But in any event, The reciprocal access agreement was signed between Australia and Japan maybe a year and a half ago, about a year and a half ago, and it went into effect 2 months ago. And what this does, it allows Australian forces to be stationed in Japan and Japanese self-defense forces to be stationed in Australia and to trade training and facilities and access, that sort of thing. That has not been done since the 1960s when the United States signed the Status of Forces Agreement with the United States. So up until now, it's only been the United States. As you know, they occupy lots of Okinawa. They have lots of personnel there. They get into trouble sometimes, the soldiers, because there are so many of them there. But it's a very big deal. And now it is opening up, and we've got this reciprocal access agreement. It's like Status of Forces with the United States, with Australia. It won't stop there. The British are next. There are other countries that are going to be coming up pretty quickly with that now that the door has been opened up. So with Status of Forces agreements with various allies of Japan, you can understand that this growing prowess of Japan defense capabilities and lethality is beginning to grow, and the Japanese want a part of that. They want to be able to develop the materials and the equipment to support that. They don't want to continue to import it. Moving on to inflation, the core inflation just fell below 3% for the first time in 6 months. So inflation, the Bank of Japan wants it to be at 2%. Well, it's got to be at 2%. Let's work for 2%. It hasn't been at 2% for 18 months. But for the first time in 6 months, it has fallen below 3%. So this is a pretty big deal for those who are watching. It's still above what the Bank of Japan wants, but it exceeded it exceeded the forecasts that were promoted for this month, or for actually, these are the numbers for September. So they expected it to be, inflation to be a little bit higher, maybe 3.4 or 3.3%, and coming in just below that is something to celebrate. So they want to say that we've turned the corner, we're coming around. It's not quite like that, but there are some good signs that are coming up with regard to the inflation. They've also announced that it's unlikely for Japan to get to 2% until maybe this time next year. So it'll be an incremental change. However, that's the projection that's coming out of the Bank of Japan. There are other pundits that are saying the IMF, in fact, is saying it's going to be far later than that. You're not going to hit that target by 2025 if you're lucky. But the new numbers will be coming out on October 31st. So this time next week, we'll be able to report a little bit more on that. The Bank of Japan, speaking of them, they also intervened again Friday on the Japan government bonds. This is a big time area for Japanese debt. So the Japanese government issues these bonds, people buy the bonds, and it helps support the economy and allows the government to loan money out and keep the economy going somewhat artificially. And 5 times last month, they have tweaked the yield on these bonds. And the internal policy is we don't want it to go above 1%. So it's almost free, but it does cost something, but we don't want it to cost more than 1% over a 10-year period. And this last week, it began to approach 0.85, and they got a little bit nervous. It's not 1%. 0.85 is not 1%, and it doesn't move that rapidly. But they went in and intervened once again, the 5th time. And so with this new, Mr. Kuroda was the former Bank of Japan governor, and we have a new governor now. He's beginning to experiment a little bit. Mr. Kuroda was there for 10 years. So we're seeing a little bit more flexibility, maybe experimentation with the current Bank of Japan. And it's a very delicate balance. It's an art, it's not a science. They don't quite know that when they tweak here, it produces a certain result. They have certain attributes that they do understand, but it's a very big deal. And it impacts on the yen-dollar fluctuation too. So whenever the yen-dollar fluctuation approaches 150 yen dollar per yen, the economists and the Bank of Japan get really nervous. And it is, gosh, it's what? It's 149.86 on Friday close. So it's really touching up there. The last time the Bank of Japan intervened in a big way was about a year ago, maybe November of last year. And they came in very big. It exceeded the 150 yen mark. They came in with a massive amount of money. It pushed the yen down to about 135, 138, and it stabilized there for a bit, but now it keeps coming up. And one of the things that the Bank of Japan is dealing with is that the business in the United States is going so well, and the rate of the bonds yields being produced in the United States is what? It's about 5%. And so they're competing with that, and they're trying to keep the numbers down. They're trying to keep the yen value stable. So they're really burning the midnight oil, trying to keep the economy going, trying to keep the yen value at a stable place. It's attracting lots of investment, as you might know, from foreign companies, foreign countries, sovereign bonds, that sort of thing, because Japan is a real deal now when the yen is at 150 yen, and the tourists are loving it. So that is expected to continue on. We don't expect any big motions, but you never know. And once again, the Bank of Japan will release their findings and their forecast on the 31st, which is today is the 22nd. So this time next week, we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that. Whenever we talk about the prime minister, we always talk about, you know, who's on first base, who's on second base, who's in hot water now, what kind of headache does he have? And unfortunately, he shuffled his cabinet. He took Mr. Hamada out of the defense ministry. He put Mr. Kishida Minoru in as his replacement. And Minister Kishida, the defense chief, was in Sasebo on Monday last week, yakking up the candidate, the LDP candidate, for the lower house race in Nagasaki. And he was speaking on base to self-defense forces and their families, and he was talking about how important it is for the LDP to win this race. And if the LDP wins, you understand, because you are in the defense industry, that the LDP is moving forward with moving from 1% to 2% of GDP. And the opposition party isn't really coming along with that. So you need to come together and vote for us. And it's a little bit out of the bounds. And he got criticized for that immediately. He withdrew his comment the next day, but the opposition party, looking for any kind of thing to throw a brick at, jumped on that. They're calling for his resignation. So that's issue number one. The opening of the Diet session kind of took all of the news on Friday. It is a bit of a bubbling brouhaha, but I think as the Diet session starts on Monday, you're going to hear more about that. And it's not just the defense minister. He's got some other things going on. Let me see, there's, I wrote down the other ones who are giving him trouble. Let me see where I made those notes, because I don't want to get it wrong. But he's got 4 other people that are kind of irritating the hell out of him, and they're going to be coming up these next 2 weeks. I'll get to it when I get to my notes. I don't want to kind of dive around for it. One of the other things that happened this week that of pretty critical importance is you might have heard that there was an airlift of Japanese citizens from Israel. The conflict that's going on there is scaring the bejesus out of Japanese companies who have personnel there. And it's not just the Japanese, it's everybody who has been developing work and trade relations with Israel. Everybody's involved there. Israel does some things so superlatively that they're providing, you know, the top of the market on certain technologies. And so other countries are there with their executives. The self-defense forces flew a plane into Israel to adjoining Dubai. It wasn't Dubai, it was, I think it was Dubachi, to pick up um, Israeli citizens and fly them back out of the country or fly them out of the country. And they picked up 51 Japanese citizens. A Korean commercial airliner also went into Israel and picked up a whole plane load of Koreans, but they also included, gosh, a whole bunch of Japanese as well. So this is another kind of indication of this relationship between South Korea and Japan really beginning to take hold and to mushroom. This kind of it's not an airlift, but it's not a rescue, but it is a source of, I think pride and the ability for the South Koreans to provide that. They flew back to Seoul, Korea, 165 Korean nationals and 51 Japanese, whereas the Japanese flew into Israel and they got 8 Japanese out. They took them to Dubai. They left them in Dubai. You figure it out yourself from Dubai, but they got them out of the danger zone. But it's a real statement of what the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister of South Korea and Japan have been able to do. They've had a 2+2 meeting just this last week here in Tokyo. They've had meetings at the vice ministerial level back and forth ever since they finished the Camp David meeting last month. And it looks like there might be a heads of state meeting between South Korea, Japan, and China coming up before the end of this year. Also, the United States is angling for a Joe Biden Z meeting, probably in San Francisco if it works out, before the end of this year too. So a lot is going on diplomatically and geopolitically, something to keep an eye on. But this airlift from Israel to Seoul and also to Dubai is a pretty significant thing. People are getting the hell out of Israel, obviously. In other news, self-driving taxis are slated to be in Tokyo by 2026. That's right around the corner. Before you blink your eyes, you're going to realize that they're here. There's a joint venture that was signed between Honda and GM. GM has a special subsidiary called Cruise. They also built a car called the Cruise, but GM has a subsidiary that is dedicated to autonomous vehicles, and Honda wants a piece of that action. They have signed a joint venture just this last week in Tokyo to supply self-driving taxis in Tokyo by 2026. And if you've been following this issue, initially it was probably autonomous vehicles in the rural areas to kind of get a kind of experience on that. The roads are easier for the older people who are living in the rural areas. But they're going full force now into Tokyo instead of that option. And Cruise has been driving self-autonomous vehicles in San Francisco now for 8 months with a pretty good track record. So it looks like that announcement will start a robo-taxi service in 2026. And just as an aside to kind of indicate once again, just the complexity of working with the administration. Cruise was handling taxis in San Francisco for 6 months. They've reduced by 70% the amount of accidents that would have normally had occurred were it not for the robo-taxi. However, there was one lady who was hit by a car and she was thrown into the path of one of these robo-taxis, which hit her as a consequence. And now they're saying that, these robo-taxis are not very safe. We need to take them off the streets. We need to investigate them once again. So it's sometimes crazy how government works. But let me see, in Tokyo in 2007, there were 73,000 taxis in Tokyo. That number has fallen for a bunch of reasons, one of them being that their taxi drivers has fallen too. And last year, from 73,000, there were 48,000. So if you're having trouble finding a taxi, that's one of the reasons. The number of drivers has decreased, and the need is we need to bring in these autonomous taxis. And what's going to follow I don't know, very soon, maybe before that or after that, is autonomous trucks, because they're having even a worse problem with the trucks. But if you're in Tokyo, you've noticed that the age of taxi drivers is all over the map. And even you get into a taxi, sometimes they ask you how to get to your destination. So it's a lot's going on there. Moving on really quickly, because I don't want to take up too much time. The Belt and Road Initiative enjoyed its 10th anniversary this week. So they had a big brouhaha in Beijing to celebrate that. And a lot of people came to Beijing to celebrate. And you might have caught that Vladimir Putin also went to Beijing. And this is the reason why, because of this Belt and Road Initiative, which he has signed on to and he has facilitated. And he went there to celebrate with it. There must have been 106 countries that also participated in this, including 20 heads of state. Indonesia, Cambodia, Thailand, Papua New Guinea, and Vietnam heads of state were there. This begins to explain why Joe Biden visited Vietnam. Remember when he came to the G20 meeting, he kind of bypassed Malaysia. He was supposed to go there. He went to India instead, and then he did a side trip to Vietnam. He was supposed to fly to Papua New Guinea, and his schedule didn't allow that. So Papua New Guinea, the island nations there, they've started to develop bolster the embassies there. But there's a huge fight there because the Communist Party wants to make this Belt and Road Initiative. It was started in Kazakhstan, you might remember, when Xi said, I want to reignite the Silk Road Initiative. I want to make it better. I want to have it more robust. And they have devoted more than $1 trillion to this initiative. It's been very successful. It's taken 40 million people out of poverty. It's done a great job for some of these smaller nations because it is so heavily infrastructure focused. So big projects, streets, port facilities, bridges, that sort of thing. So it's not all bad, even though the United States likes to wag a finger at it. There have been some missteps. Sri Lanka, in fact, defaulted on its loan and lost, in fact, its ability to have the Hambantota port there. So the Russians, the Chinese got it for a 99-year lease, and so they've lost that. But that's not all the Chinese fault. I mean, the fact of what was going on in Sri Lanka too, the corruption that was going on there. But it is very interesting. In the same period of time that the Belt and Road Initiative has been going on, the World Bank has devoted $80 billion over the 10-year period similarly. So they're trying to, play the same game. They're not as robust as the Chinese, and the Chinese have a real plan, the Belt and Road, Silk Road, and One Road Initiative. And so this 10-year anniversary was just this last week. I thought I would bring it up to you because it's somewhat important, and it kind of indicates what the real state of play is now. Ishin and the Constitutional Democratic Party are opposed to the LDP. You're going to see more of that coming out this week. They are opposed particularly on the Unification Church. So in Japanese politics now, the Unification Church is a big issue. So the Education Ministry lodged a complaint to the court this last week to withdraw the church status of the Unification Church, and the lower court is now considering that. And that would mean that the Unification Church loses its tax status, and now it must pay taxes. It can still continue its religious activities. It's just not recognized as a religious organization, and therefore it can collect donations. It doesn't have to pay tax on that. So the Constitutional Democratic Party and the Ishin are lining up for that because they want to support bills in the extraordinary diet session that goes after the Unification Church. So the Unification Church, the Japanese population generally perceives them to be an illicit organization. They were behind so many just shady donations. They sell, they actually collect the houses and the assets of elderly people so that their ancestors can go through the pearly gates or whatever the sales pitch is there, but they've been very successful there. And with their status being withdrawn, there's two options for them. They can stay in Japan and continue doing their religious services, still collecting donations, still trying to compel people to tithe to the church, but they wouldn't be getting the tax benefit. And the second thing that they can do, and probably most people predict that this is what they will do, is they will close up shop here. They will sell their assets. They'll take all the value and go back to South Korea where they were first started. And so the Constitutional Democratic Party wants to prevent that, and the Ishin wants to prevent that too, but they're taking different tracks on that. Ishin, let me see, the Ishin wants to, let me see. Ishin wants to promote legislation that would prevent them from doing that by applying the revisions to the religious law that's in effect now. And the Constitutional Democratic Party wants to create a new law that attacks just the Unification Church on this issue. And the reason why both of them love this issue is because as this issue begins to boil up, the LDP wants to just push it aside and make it go away because they are implicated in it. Especially the Seiwakai, the Abe faction, is the most heavily invested into the Unification Church for a long time throughout the Abe administration, but the Unification Church has been in Japan for 35 years, so it's quite a long time. So they're using this as a kind of a lever to kind of attack the LDP and to expose them for everything they've been doing with the Unification Church and why it is so important for this to be exposed for everybody. Exports rose in September alarmingly, surprisingly, to 4.3%, mostly in shipments of cars and medical supplies. Economists predicted that it would be a 3% increase because of the yen value, and Japanese cars, Japanese medical equipment, Japanese products in general seem a little bit more attractive cost-wise when the yen is like that, but it really shot up 4.3%, made people step back and take a look at it. Imports fell 16.3%, and that was dragged down by oil, LNG gas, and coal. So typically what the economy is based on here in Japan over the last 2 years is export growth. But more recently, the Japanese economy depends on not the native economy producing wealth. It's actually sucking it up. It's outside of Japan is buying Japanese products, and that's supporting the economy. That's not a healthy way to run a country, and they know that. So they need to have the economy internally develop, generating more of the wealth. So it's a little bit upside down. So the fact that imports fell 16.3% is a good sign. So the trade imbalance swayed into the positive, not a whole lot, $417 million, but it's a big deal because it also impacts on inflation. But the economists are expecting exports to continue to decline. Exports to China were down 6.2%, and China is Japan's largest trading partner. So for that to be diminished by 6.2% over the last quarter is pretty scary. On the other side, exports to the United States is up 13%, and to the EU up 13%. The food to China is down. Food exports to China is down 58%, including the fish stocks. And as I said earlier, Russia has cut off now all Japanese food exports. I think I'm going a little bit long. I need to wrap this up. There's a lot of other things going on, but maybe we can deal with them in the Q&A period. I don't want to go too long beyond 30 minutes because your survey, Maya, has told us that the audience prefers a snappier, briefer initial presentation and then more time spent on the Q&A. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Maya.
Yes, thank you, Timothy. お疲れ様です. We haven't finished yet, but anyway. So this is the, okay, there is a question to you, and it is about your location.
Yes.
So from Hiroaki, are you reporting from the Tokyo Bay today?
Yes, I am. And I just turned around to get a look at what we have, and all I have are trucks. And so I apologize for that. I put myself in this position specifically so that the audience would be able to see the cars that are coming in. But Hiroaki, I am at the Akalenga, which is on the water in Yokohama. I can give you just a bit of a view here, if you don't mind. I'm on the water here. You can see there's a cruise ship out there. And coming back over here, you can see the Bay Area. And
Right.
the Akalenga was a tax office, so goods would come in off the ships here. They would go through the warehouses here. They would receive their taxes, and then they would be spit out into the Japanese economy. They've refurbished the red brick warehouses, the two of them, and now they've been very much gentrified. They're food services and shops and that sort of thing. And the Rolls-Royce and Bentley Owners Club secured this venue to show off all their cars. So there are about 60 old and brand new Rolls-Royce and Bentleys that are here today.
So everybody can go there and also find you there?
Sure.
Timothy?
I'll be here until around 3 o'clock. It's open to the public. Last year, more than 4,000 people strolled through the promenade, trying to kick tires and trying to throw rocks at me, but none of them were very successful.
Right. Okay, so if you don't mind me going back to the topic, actually, the theme of this briefing, Japanese politics.
Oh, that's right. Oh, right. Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you about, well, actually, there is some talk about cutting the income tax by the government, and it seems that they have been considering this policy for a while. I don't know whether we can actually expect that to happen or not. I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
That's a great question. So the idea is they have been discussing it. The consumption tax now is at 10%. And Komeito and the LDP are considering, why don't we drop it to 8%? Give people a little bit of a reprieve. And the problem is developing the authority to drop it from 10% to 8% is going to take several months and be very difficult to get through the parliament and then to make it available to the Japanese people. So there are some people that say, let's do it that way. And there are more people that saying, that's not the way to do it. It is not the fastest way to inject into the economy money. So let's make a supplemental budget that has money for people, subsidies, and bring down the cost of oil and bring down the cost of food so that people have a little bit more money in their pockets because the Japanese government is subsidizing things. That's more immediate, and I think that's where they're going to put their money. Some of the opposition parties say, what the hell, bring the consumption tax down from 10% to 5%. So that's one of the fights that will be happening over the next couple of weeks in this extraordinary diet session.
Right. So, sorry, did you mention anything about the income tax as well?
No, I didn't mention anything about the income tax. I think the income tax is even a tougher issue. I was talking mostly about the consumption tax.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, because basically we know that, well, the government is planning to raise the tax. Is that maybe income tax so that they can finance the defense spending from the year 2025 on? But now,
yes, so you're right. So they're going to increase the defense budget. And in order to do that, the prime minister has not said how he's going to do it. And people think that probably the best way to do that is increase the consumption tax from 10% to maybe 12%. That is being touted. But they all know that the economy is so delicate now. The yen is at 150. It's just teetering at 150. If it goes to 150, then the Bank of Japan is going to jump in. And when they jump in massively. They jump in with lots and lots of money, far more money than what the defense industry is consuming, in fact, to just modify the yen rate that is observed globally. So if they do that, that's a very big deal. So one of the things that the prime minister is frequently criticized about is that he talks a big talk, but how he is supposed to get it achieved is left a little bit mysterious. And so that's why people were looking forward to his State of the Union on Friday, because maybe he would say something about that so that the LDP would win both of the elections today. He wasn't able to do that, so we'll wait for Monday. But everybody in the opposition camps is going to be saying, how the hell do you propose achieving these things that you're talking about to convince people to have more children, to enhance their wages so that they're spending more money, so that we have, rather than an export-driven economy, an economy that's driven internally by trade and investment and startups and people having children and buying, washing machines and trading in their cars and getting new cars and building a house. That's what he needs to trigger, and he hasn't been able to find that combination yet.
Well, thank you for that. We have a couple of questions on YouTube today. So the first one is from Rumiko, and then there will be another one from Hiroaki. So, but the one from Rumiko is, would you please let me know whether they have revisited the invoicing system?
They have.
Okay.
They've revisited it by saying it will be implemented. So it starts this month. So invoices that are being issued, you need to have the invoicing number. Each commercial entity needs to have their own. And so it really kills people like Remy, who are independent contractors. They have their own company. They produce their own products or services. They need to have invoices that are issued that have a number assigned to them, like a social security number. So now the tax agency is going to be able to look at all of the invoices that are being issued and how the money is being generated and who is paying it to enhance. So what they're trying to do is enhance the collection of taxes rather than increase the taxes, if you can follow me. So rather than increasing the taxes, let's be a little bit more adroit at collecting the taxes that we should have collected if people were being honest and if we were capturing all of the underground money that's being dealt with in cash and unobserved by the tax authorities. That's the strategy there.
Yes, I cannot see anything, surprising there. The surprising thing to me personally is that it has taken so long for Japan to implement that system, actually. With the number and I mean, that ensures, that all the companies pay tax and so on. But yes, from an operational point of view, Rumiko says, from operational perspective, this invoicing system is quite bothering. Yes.
So, yeah, because people who were not normally paying taxes or didn't feel the obligation to pay taxes. And if you have a company that's not earning beyond 10 million a year in your first year, you don't have to pay the consumption tax. So there are some stipulations that allow people to get a little bit more benefit when they're first starting up. But I think the tax authorities are saying, let's try and capture more of the money that is being generated rather than forcing the people who do pay taxes honestly to pay a little bit more.
Right. Yes. And thank you for the comments, Timothy. Then going to Hiroaki's question. Once again, it is on YouTube. So Hiroaki's question is, what will be the surprise from PM Kishida's parliament speech tomorrow? Do you expect any surprises there?
In my estimation, he needs to really be audacious in order to kind of get people's attention and to shake them out of this pall that is kind of taken over the country. He really needs to come up with something astounding. And so I think, yeah, you just never know. He might he might propose lowering the consumption tax to 8% or even 5% for a 10-month period or a very brief period of time. But I think that he will propose a supplemental package which will go into effect immediately. So the great thing about this extraordinary diet session and the supplemental budget is that once it passes the diet before the 13th of December, that money immediately goes into the economy. So it is something to look forward to. But once again, people are very curious. How the hell are you going to do it? You've got the defense spending. You've got to pay the fisheries for the amount of loss that they're suffering too. What's the plan, Prime Minister? So hopefully he will be getting into that.
Hopefully he will. And where does all that money come from, right?
Like some countries, they just print it. The United States is famous for that. I think in Japan, the tactic here is having the Bank of Japan issue more government bonds and then purchasing those bonds, which increases the debt of the country. It's just a different tactic, probably reaches the same conclusion. The Japanese debt ratio is just astronomical. Nobody on the G20 has a debt ratio like the Japanese country does. But yeah, one way or the other, you got to cut that baby in half.
Right. Okay, good. And then let me have a look. Okay, in Clubhouse, well, everybody has been very quiet there. And yes, it looks like we have gone through all the comments. If anybody in Clubhouse still has comments or questions, please let us know before we close up the room, because I'm sure that Timothy is very impatient to go and talk with his friends at that show. If you're on YouTube or also the LinkedIn, you can now see some of the cars that have already been parked there and that are out there for the day. Maybe at least until 3 o'clock, if you have time to visit Yokohama and enjoy these beautiful cars, please do. Okay.
And let's not forget. I mean, I guess we're starting to wrap up, Maya.
But, yes, we are.
Your 27th birthday once again. Let's get together on Wednesday at the Popeyes in Lokoku. If you're interested in joining us, we'll be there from 6:30. Quaffing beers. You can go to their website, which has a great name, 70beersontap.com. It used to be, when I first went there, it was 100beersontap.com. So they've reduced it somewhat, but they're all very unique and lots of different kinds of beers there. It's a tremendous kind of beer hall atmosphere. So please come out and join us and celebrate, I don't know, maybe the 60th time Maya's had her 24th birthday.
Yes. Well, I have been in Japan forever, so probably I qualify as a dinosaur in this community. Okay, so thank you very much, Timothy. It's been a pleasure listening to you again. And to everybody who stayed with us, thanks for dedicating your Sunday morning to this briefing. It was a pleasure having you with us. And we'll be here once again next Sunday at 8:20. So who knows where Timothy will be reporting from. Hopefully it will be above water, on the ground, and everything will be fine. That's all for today. Thanks again. Enjoy the beautiful Sunday morning and
Thank you,
afternoon.
everybody. Thank you, Maya.
Thank you, Timothy.